A gynecologist waits on his last patient, who does not arrive. After an hour, he makes a gin and tonic to relax. After he settles into an armchair to read the newspaper, he hears the doorbell ring. It's the patient, who arrives all embarrassed and apologizes for the delay. "It doesn't matter," answers the doctor. "Look, I was having a gin and tonic while waiting. Do you want one to help you relax?" "I accept, thank you," she answers. He gives her a drink, sits down in front of her, and they start talking. Suddenly, someone is heard opening the entrance to the office door. The doctor looks worried, gets up and says, "My wife! Quick, take off your clothes and spread your legs, otherwise she might think there's some nonsense going on."
A man came to see his family doctor. The man told his doctor that he wasn't able to do all the things around the house that he used to. When the examination was complete, he said, "Now, Doc, I can take it. Tell me in plain English, what is wrong with me?" "Well, in plain English," the doctor replied, "you're just lazy." "Okay," said the man. "Now give me the medical term so I can tell my wife."
A woman went to the doctor and complained that she was suffering from knee pains. "Do you indulge in any activity that puts a lot of pressure on your knees?" asked the doctor. "Every night, my husband and I have sex on the floor doggy style." "I see," said the doctor. "You know there are plenty of other sexual positions. Not if you want to watch TV, there ain't."
Standing beside a valiant stallion, a beautiful blonde decides she must ride this animal despite having no previous riding experience. Soon, she finds herself atop the horse's back, galloping through a lush green meadow. The horse suddenly picks up speed and she finds herself euphoric over the freedom she is experiencing. Once again, the magnificent animal picks up speed, except this time, her inexperience gets the better of her. She finds herself barely able to hang on. The startled horse is now in a dead run, and the beautiful blonde finds herself hanging off to one side of the horse, her head just inches from the ground. Catastrophe seconds away. She begins to frantically scream for help when all of a sudden, Frank, the Walmart doorman, calmly walks up and unplugs the ride.
A blonde, a brunette, and a redhead are traveling through the desert when their car suddenly stalls. They all get out of the car, and, upon realizing that it's not going to start, they each take one thing from the car. The brunette takes a bottle of water, and the redhead takes a bag of food. The blonde gets some tools from the trunk, removes a door from the car, and takes the door with her. They begin to walk through the desert, and soon stop to rest. At this point, the blonde and the brunette turn to the redhead and ask her why she brought the food. She replies, "Well, in case I get hungry, I have something to eat." They all think this is pretty reasonable. Then the redhead and the blonde turn to the brunette and ask her why she decided to bring water. The brunette replies, "Well, in case I got thirsty, I'll have something to drink." They all decide that's a good idea too. Finally, the brunette and the redhead turn to the blonde and ask her why on earth she would take the car door. She replies, "Well, I thought if I got hot, I could roll down the window." The executive was interviewing a young blonde for a position in his company. He wanted to find out something about her personality, so he asked, "If you can have a conversation with someone, living or dead, who would it be?" The blonde quickly responded, "The living one."
After 20 years of marriage, a couple was lying in bed one evening, when the wife felt her husband begin to touch her in ways he hadn't in quite some time. It almost tickled as his fingers started at her neck, and then began moving down past the small of her back. He then slid his hand across her shoulders and neck, slowly worked it down one side, then the other, stopping just over her lower stomach. He then proceeded to place his hand on her left inner arm, caressed downward again, working down her side, passed gently over, and then in between her buttocks, and down her leg to her calf. Then he proceeded up her innermost thigh, stopping just at the uppermost portion of her leg. He continued in the same manner on her right side, then suddenly stopped, rolled over, and became silent. As she had become quite aroused by this caressing, she asked in a loving voice, "That was wonderful. Why did you stop?" "I found the remote."
A psychiatrist was conducting a group therapy session with 3 young mothers and their small children. "You all have obsessions," he observed. To the first mother, he said, "You are obsessed with eating. You've even named your daughter Candy." He turned to the second mom. "Your obsession is money. Again, it manifests itself in your child's name, Penny." At this point, the third mother got up, took her little boy by the hand, and whispered, "Come on, Dick, let's go."
Grandma and Grandpa were visiting their kids overnight. When Grandpa found a bottle of Viagra in his son's medicine cabinet, he asked about using one of the pills. The son said, "I don't think you should take one, Dad. They're very strong and very expensive." "How much?" asked Grandpa. $10 a pill," answered the son. "I don't care," said Grandpa. "I'd still like to try one. And before we leave in the morning, I'll put the money under the pillow." The next morning, the son found $110 under the pillow. He called Grandpa and said, "I told you each pill was $10, not 110. "I know," said Grandpa. "The 100 is from Grandma." 3 secretaries all left the office for lunch together. As they got in the elevator, they noticed a small pool of whitish fluid on the floor. The brunette said, "Ugh, is that semen?" The redhead leaned closer and said, "Yep, that's definitely semen." The blonde leaned down and scooped up a fingerful. After tasting it, she said, "Well, it's certainly not anyone in our office."
An Englishman, a Frenchman, and a ravishing blonde and a homely brunette are sharing a compartment on a train as it winds its way through the Alps. Every now and then, the train passes through a tunnel, during which time the compartment is plunged into complete darkness. On one such occasion, a ringing slap is heard, and as the train passes back into daylight, the Frenchman is rubbing his sore red cheek. The brunette thinks, "I bet that dirty Frenchman fondled the blonde and she struck the pervert." The blonde thinks, "I bet that filthy Frenchman was looking to grope me in the dark, mistook the dowdy brunette for me, and she slapped the beast." The Frenchman thinks, "I bet that perfidious English touched up the blonde in the dark and she slapped me by mistake." The Englishman thinks, "I can't wait for another tunnel so I can slap that French twat again."
A man gets sick. He goes to the doctor with his wife. The doctor examines him, then asks the wife for a private conversation. "Ma'am, your husband is suffering from stress. You have to help him." "How can I help him?" "Well, first of all, nutrition. You should every morning cook him a fat-free meal, meat for lunch, and a lot of vegetables for dinner. He also needs to rest. Do not argue with him. Do not criticize him. Preferably, let him watch a lot of soccer games. Sex is also very important. Try to have sex several times a week. And do not tell him anything about this conversation, as it would just make his situation worse. If you follow these steps for the next couple of months, your husband will recover. Otherwise, unfortunately, he will die." The wife goes back to her husband. He asks, "So what did the doctor say?" "That you're gonna die." A guy appeared before St. Peter at the Pearly Gates. "Have you ever done anything of particular merit?" St. Peter asked. "Well, I can think of one thing. On a trip to the Black Hills out in South Dakota, I came upon a gang of bikers who were threatening a young woman. I directed them to leave her alone, but they wouldn't listen. So, I approached the largest and most tattooed biker and smacked him in the face, kicked his bike over, ripped out his nose ring, and threw it on the ground. I yelled, 'Now back off or I'll kick the shit out of all of you.' St. Peter was impressed. When did this happen? A couple of minutes ago."
There was a blonde woman named Cindy. She was in deep financial problems. So, she got on her knees and prayed. Dear God, please let me win the lottery. I really need your help, or I'll lose my car and my house. She doesn't win. The next day she prays to God again. God, I really need your help. I'll lose my car, the house, and everything else. Once again, she doesn't win. The next day she says the same prayer. Then God speaks to her. Cindy, work with me here. Please, buy a ticket.
A guy took his blonde girlfriend to the Super Bowl. They had great seats right behind their team's bench. After the game, he asked her how she liked it. "Oh, I really liked it," she replied, "especially the tight pants and all the big muscles. But I just couldn't understand why they were killing each other over 25 cents. Dumbfounded, her boyfriend asked, "What do you mean?" Well, they flipped a coin, one team got it, then for the rest of the game, all they kept screaming was, "Get the quarterback! Get the quarterback!" I'm like, hello, it's only 25 cents.
A married Irishman went into the confessional and said to his priest, "I almost had an affair with another woman." The priest said, "What do you mean, almost?" The Irishman said, "Well, we got undressed and rubbed together, but then I stopped." The priest said, "Rubbing together is the same as putting it in. You're not to see that woman again. For your penance, say 5 Hail Marys and put $50 in the poor box." The Irishman left the confessional, said his prayers, and then walked over to the poor box. He paused for a moment and then started to leave. The priest, who was watching, quickly ran over to him saying, "I saw that you didn't put any money in the poor box." The Irishman replied, "Yeah, but I rubbed the $50 on the box, and according to you, that's the same as putting it in." A mother is in the kitchen making dinner for her family when her daughter walks in. "Mother, where do babies come from?" The mother thinks for a few seconds and says, "Well, dear, Mommy and Daddy fell in love and got married. One night, they go into their bedroom, they kiss and hug and have sex." The daughter looks puzzled, so the mother continues. "That means the daddy puts his penis in the mommy's vagina. That's how you get a baby, honey." The child seems to comprehend. "Oh, I see. But the other night when I came into your room and you had daddy's penis in your mouth. What do you get when you do that?" "Jewelry, my dear. Jewelry."
An old man is walking in a park and hears a voice by a pond. "Sir, I am an enchanted princess. If you set me free, I promise I'll be your sex slave forever." The old man looks around but can see nothing. As he walks away, he hears the voice again. "Sir, please let me free. You will have such pleasure and ecstasy as never before." The old man looks around and sees a frog on the ground. He picks it up, and indeed, it was the frog who was talking. Once again, the frog promises him that she will satisfy him if he kisses her. The old man puts her in his pocket and walks towards home. "But sir, you need to kiss me so I can change back and we can share the pleasures. You will enjoy it," cries the frog. The old man stops, takes the frog out of his pocket, puts her in his hand, and raises her to his face. He says, "You know, princess, at my age, I have more use of having a talking frog."
Some construction workers are working on a high building early in the morning. Sadly, Steve slips off a ledge, spirals down to the ground, and dies. Bill says, "Someone needs to tell Steve's wife." Joey says, "I'll do it. I'm very sensitive." Joey goes off, then a few hours later comes back with 2 cases of beer. Bill asks, "Where did you get the beer?" Joey says, "Steve's wife gave it to me." Bill says, "You told her Steve was dead and she gave you beer?" "Not exactly. When she answered the door, I said, 'You must be Steve's widow.' And she said, 'I'm not a widow.' And I said, 'I bet you 2 cases of beer that you are.'"
In a small town, a doctor is about to retire, and a young colleague comes to replace him. They visit all the patients together, and the old doctor introduces the young one everywhere. "Doctor, I've been having a constant stomach ache lately," cries one of the patients. The old doctor answers, "Didn't you eat too much fruit? I think you should eat less. That'll make you okay." As the two doctors leave the house, the young man wonders, "How could you make a diagnosis so quickly? You didn't even examine the lady." "Simple. I dropped my stethoscope, and as picking it up, I saw that the trash can under the table was full of banana peels. I immediately realized what was wrong." They move on to the next house, where they are greeted by another lady. It's the young doctor's turn. "Doctor, I've been feeling exhausted and weak lately," says the lady. "Well, ma'am, maybe you should do less volunteering for the church and get more rest." As they leave, the surprised old doctor asks his colleague, "How did you know that? After all, you didn't even examine the lady, and you didn't even know her." Simple. I dropped my stethoscope, and as picking it up, I saw the priest under the bed."
A family is at the dinner table. The son asks the father, "Dad, how many kinds of boobs are there?" The father, surprised, answers, "Well, son, a woman goes through 3 phases. In her 20s, a woman's breasts are like melons, round and firm. In her 30s and 40s, they are like pears, still nice, hanging a bit. After 50, they are like onions." "Onions?" the son asks. "Yes, you see them and they make you cry." This infuriated his wife and daughter, so the daughter asks, "Mom, how many different kinds of willies are there?" The mother smiles and says, "Well, dear, a man also goes through 3 phases. In his 20s, his willie is like an oak tree, mighty and hard. In his 30s and 40s, it's like a birch, flexible but reliable. After his 50s, it's like a Christmas tree." "A Christmas tree?" the daughter asks. "Yes, dead from the root up, and the balls are just for decoration."
John and his wife are getting ready for bed. The wife is standing in front of a full-length mirror, taking a hard look at herself. "You know, love," she says, "I look in the mirror and I see an old woman. My face is all wrinkled, my boobs are barely above my waist, and my bum is hanging out a mile. I've got fat legs and my arms are all flabby." She turns to John and says, "Tell me something positive to make me feel better about myself." He thinks about it for a bit and then says in a soft voice, "Well, there's nothing wrong with your eyesight."
Two guys, one old-timer and one in his mid-20s, are pushing their carts around Lowe's when they collide. The old-timer says to the young guy, "Sorry about that. I'm looking for my wife, and I guess I wasn't paying attention to where I was going." The young guy says, "That's a funny coincidence. I'm looking for my wife too. I can't find her, and I'm getting a little desperate." The old guy says, "Well, maybe we can help each other. What does your wife look like?" The young guy says, "Well, she is 24 years old, tall, with blonde hair, big blue eyes, long legs, big boobs, and she's wearing tight white shorts, a halter top, and no bra. What does your wife look like?" The old-timer says, "Doesn't matter. Let's look for yours."
When you want to hear more of the best jokes ever, hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you know when the next video is coming. And if this video brightened up your day and made you laugh, go ahead and give it a like.